Okay, today's material would be overriding and overloading method, which is it is part of polymorphism concept, but I will not discuss or I will not describe about polymorphism in detail because it will be described in other weeks. But since overriding and overloading method was part of polymorphism, so I would like to explain you some small detail regarding to the polymorphism. So polymorphism in basic comes from Greek, which means many forms. In object-oriented programming, this concept allows the use of the same interface to command object to perform actions or activity that may be the same in principle, but the process would be different. And polymorphism is the ability of a method to work with more than one type of argument. In our language, this kind of concept often called method overloading. And as you know, Java has some several restrictions, unlike other programming languages such as Python or PHP. Uh, Python and PHP doesn't handle this specifically because in Python, uh, the programming language was dynamic enough. So because it's not considered regarding to the data type as same as the PHP, so the overloading concept never been an issue in Python. Unlike in Java, as you know that several weeks ago I already explained that there are some restrictions regarding to some concept or some object-oriented concept to be performed in Java, such as uh, there are limitations regarding to the constructor that cannot be inherited because of the limitation of the how to call the constructor or the parent constructor itself, but not that kind of condition not appear in Python or PHP because as you know that PHP and Python is not really taking care of the data type itself. So they are having a which most people call the data type in Java, also in Python or PHP was a juggling data type because there are no specific rules to define data type. So that is why this kind of condition uh, can be applied perfectly or fully if you are using Python, unlike in Java where you have some restriction. So there is one kind of surface that surface detail about polymorphism, polymorphism itself. And basically, you all you need to remember is the polymorphism concept was uh, means many form. It means that uh, if you can imagine, if you have some a form of an object, if you apply a polymorphism concept, which means that each object can be blended into another object without losing its own identity. I will describe it better by using some example. And basically, in object-oriented programming, some part of polymorphism called overloading and overriding. Okay, so overloading uh, concept was defined if you are using one name for several different methods. Okay? You can define this kind of condition if you are using a different parameters. And for the overriding concept, occurs when a subclass method is declared with the same name and the same parameter as the method of its superclass. Okay. Firstly, we will discuss about overloading itself. The overloading method means overloading methods means a method with the same name but has a different parameter. And this method is the can be appears in the same class or it can be in another class that is related in the inheritance hierarchy. So the characteristic of overloading that you need to memorize or you need to remember is it has to be having the same name, the same method name with the other method. And the other would be the list of parameters, or in this method we call signators, is different. And also the return type of the method can be the same or different. This is the example of overloading. Let's say we have a human class. Okay? We have a human class, and in this class we have several methods that has same name. As you can see, the name in this method was is set biodata. We have three set biodata, but if you notice, they are having a different numbers of parameters. The first method have only one parameters, and the second method have two parameters, and the third method have three parameters. This kind of condition is allowed in Java. Okay, but it is necessarily for you to differentiate between the method by using the a different number of parameters, like appears in this example. Okay. It is not allowed if you have uh, if you have the same method by only have and it has the same um, parameter numbers like this one. Let's say we are erasing or we are omitting the age parameter. This kind of condition is not allowed in Java, okay? Because it has the same number of parameter with others. It is not allowed, but it will be allowed if, okay, it will be allowed if you are using this one. Let's say we are omitting the name parameter. So as you can see, even though that the number of the parameter is the same, but the data type of the parameter is not the same. So this kind of condition is allowed in Java. Okay, this is one of the rules to use the overloading concept in Java. Okay, so basically you need to remember that the basic concept of overloading is it is okay for you to have the same method name as long as you are differentiate between them by using the parameter number or the parameter data type. Okay. Okay. And the next one, as you can see, we are creating a human test or human main class to test the previous class and running out. As you can see, we are creating an object man by using the human class, and then we are calling the method of the object. You can see that this is we call the first method by using only one parameter, and the other one The other one, we are calling another method by using three parameters. This kind of condition is allowed or permissible. So it is okay for you to have the same method name because uh, in basics, uh, an object uh, in real world object, the method should represent the ability of the object itself. So if you are using a different name to represent those activity or uh, uh, to represent those method or those function, then it will be losing its meaning. So this kind of situation or this kind of condition was applied for the method uh, to give a proper name of the activity or the proper name of the function for an object. So unlike the structural programming, where this kind of condition cannot be applied. So you cannot have the same function name within a single function or in a single in a single file or in a single let's say, in a single form. You cannot have two different methods by using the same method name. It is not permissible. You have to use another name uh, to to uh, to to name the function or to name the activity. So if you are using a different name where the function itself are similar, it will be losing the real meaning of the function itself. Okay, that's the main basics of why this kind of concept stand or why this kind of concept occurs in object-oriented programming. Okay, as you can see, we are running after we run this main class. The result is success, and they can use a different uh, method by differentiation by using the parameter differentiation. And a constructor also can be overloaded. I believe you already know about this. So you can have a multiple constructor inside a single class. So the same concept with the method itself. So this is the example of the constructor or a multiple constructor inside one class. Let's say we have a cat class, and inside those class we have two different constructors. The differentiation would be the numbers of the parameter itself. This this kind of condition also can be applied into the constructor, like I already said before. You can differentiate by using the number of the parameter, or you can differentiate it by using a different data type in for parameter for the parameter itself. Okay, so I hope you still remember the important key about constructor. The constructor the constructor name have to be the same with the class name. This is the key, or this is how you define a constructor method. So as you can see, when we are creating a main application, let's say we are creating object Jerry from that class by using a constructor without parameter, and we are creating another object called Garfield by using the same class, right? But we are using a different constructor method, which is we give a parameter inside the constructor. So as you can see, the result also different. This is coming from the first constructor, and then the object Garfield was coming from the second constructor. Okay. And when do we use overloading? When we use overloading is also the reason is to simplify the programming code and to keep the consistency of method name. And because sometimes we need to create several methods that have the same use, but have a different parameter or are having a different process inside. So this is the example on how we use the overloading method in a real world scenario. And for example, we have a motorbike repairing shop that can repair our type of motorbike. However, the repairing process itself is different between, let's say, between a matic bike and a motorbike. But the activity name is still the same. It's called service. Okay. So how do we differentiate it? We can differentiate it by making or creating a different method that having the same name in this method called service, but we are differentiated by using a different parameter. As you can see, the first method using the motormatic class as the parameter, and for the second method, we are using the motorsport class as the parameter. This kind of condition can also be applied in Java. So even though that the number of the parameter is the same, it's only have it's only have a single parameter. But as you can see, the data type of this parameter is different. The first parameter using the motormatic class as the data type, and the other is using the motorsport uh, data type as the another parameter, uh, data type parameter. So if we try to implement this class into uh, into a real world situation, then we can create the object of motormatic, and then we send it into the, and we call the service parameter by sending the object of the motormatic class. So when we use the overriding, you need to remember the characteristic of the overriding itself. It needs to be occurs in a subclass or a derived class. It has a same method name. The parameter is sorry, this is a different different discussion. So this is the overloading scenarios. So the real example will be explained later, and this is only for to give you a short brief description regarding the overloading. And for the for another this part would be overriding. Okay, so the overriding occurs when there is a method in a subclass with the same name and designator as its parent. The overriding characteristic would be it must to be occurs in a subclass or a derived class. Okay, derived class means it is in an inherited class, so it have to be occurs in this class. It cannot be occurs in this class. It cannot be occurs in this class. It have to be occurs, or it have to be applied in derived class or in a subclass class. Okay, and the other characteristic would be using the same method name. and the signature of the parameter arrangement is the same. So it has to be the having the same parameter numbers or having the same parameter data type. It have to be the same. And also the return type of the method have to be the same. This is applied for the overriding method characteristic. And let's say we have a class parent that having an info method. As you can see, the info method don't have any parameters. And then to be able to apply an overriding method, you have to create a child class where it's extended from the parent class. And it also has to have same method name, and also the same parameter value. You can see it has to be the same. If the parent have no parameter, then the child also must not have any parameter. But as you can see, the content of the parameter, or sorry, the content of the method is different. It means that the child method overriding the parent method, or in short case, it means that the child method is replacing the parent's method. Okay, another example, another characteristic that you have to be remember that the overridden method cannot have a wider access right than the overriding method. Okay, it's mean that if the parent method modifier access is public, uh, you cannot you cannot simplify it, or uh, you cannot shallow shallow the modifier modifier access into lower than the parent class. In this example, you can see that the parent class modifier was public and the child modifier was private. It is not allowed because if the parent modifier access was public, so the lowest have to be public, and the largest is no other modifier wider than the public. So the only thing that it can have, the only thing that you can do to apply for this kind of condition is to have the same. If you wanted to overriding parent class, then you have to make sure that the access modifier is wider or the same with the parent. This kind of condition cannot be applied. So it will be different if the parent modifier access was private and the child modifier access was public. It is okay for you to do that because the extended because the child method is wider than uh, the parent method modifier access. It is allowed. What is not allowed is if the child uh, if the child access modifier was narrow than the parent access modifier. And this is the example of the overriding method. Let's say we have a class A, and then we have class B, where is extend from class A. And as you can see, uh, we are having uh, show into the screen method. You can see the translation is. So in the sprint method, as you can see, the class B method was replacing the parent method. So when we create object from class B and the object was calling the method, then the method will be called from this one. It will not different from this one. This is the result of this application. This is the concept of overriding method. When we use the overriding is used when there is a class that is derived from another class, but the class wants to change the functionality of the inherited method without having to add new method name. So the real world overriding scenarios, let's say we are there is an electric car which is derived from a cars or a common cars. So let's say the basic concept of a normal, not normal, a conventional car, we have a adding speed or increasing speed method. The electric car also have the adding speed method or adding speed uh, activity, but the process between the conventional car and the electric car when it has to increase the speed is different. It has a different characteristic between a conventional car and an electric car. But the name of the method is the same, increasing the speed or adding speed. So this kind of condition means that we need to apply the overriding method. So let's say we have a rule that adding speed in a general or in a conventional car was implemented by increasing the supply of the fuel and the air into the engine. But the adding speed method in an electric car would not be the same as the parent or the conventional car, where since the electric car not using the fuel, it's using the electricity as its main power. So to add speed, the electric car needs to increase the voltage of the electricity into the engine. So even though that the method name was the same, but the process inside it was different. So this is a kind of scenario that's suitable for you to use the overriding method. So let's try to let's try to create the class. Firstly, we create the car class first inside the, and then we create a method inside a common car or a conventional car. So let's say we did some rule, which is uh, we add uh, we add the supply of the fuel and the air into the engine. This is for increasing speed in a common car or in a conventional car. And then we have an electric car where it's extended from a conventional car. And we also create a method that have the same name with the parent, but we are changing the process inside it, where uh, where it's unlike the common car, it's not adding the fuel, but we are increasing the electricity voltage into the engine. So when we are trying uh, to create to create the object, And when the object was increasing with speed, then the process or, or the result will be different. And this is another example of overloading. Okay, let's say that there is a gas station that has an automatic filling features. And if the car that is being filled is a luxury car, then the gas station will be automatically fill it with the Pertamax kind of fuel. But if the car that's going to be fueled is an old car, then the gas station will automatically fill it with a different kind of fuel, which is Pertalite. So, so the gas station will be differentiate the the fuel type by checking whether the car is a luxury car or a conventional car or an old car. So let's make it simple. Let's say we have two classes. The first class would be mobile luxury car, and the second class would be the old car. Okay? This is the luxury car, and then this is the old car. So we try to create an object, let's say alpha, by using the mobile luxury car class, and we are also creating a carry object by using the old car class. And we try to create a gas station itself from a gas station class. So when the gas station object is going to fuel the object carry, which is coming from the when the gas station is trying to fueling the object carry, which is coming from the old car class, then the result would be this one. It's coming for it will be fueled with a Pertalite. But when the gas station was filling up an object that is coming from a luxury car, then it will be fueling it with the Pertamax kind of fuel. So how do we differentiate it? Of course, we can differentiate it by using the overloading method. As you can see, let's say we are creating a luxury car class and then the old car class, and we also create the gas station class. As you can see, the gas station class has two methods which have the same name, which is fueling, okay? Which is fueling or add fuel, but it has a different type of parameter. The first type parameter which is coming from the uh, luxury class, luxury car class, and then the second method was coming from the old car class. So this kind of condition means that you already applied the overloading kind of situation or overloading kind of method. And the example for overriding, let's say we are having a starting information system. And inside the starting information system, we have a data for managers and supervisors. And supervisors are inherited or a descendant of a manager, where the class manager itself has an attribute called name and salary attribute. And the manager also have activity, sorry, this is not a state. have an activity called print, which it will be printing out all of its attribute. Okay, and all the classes between manager and supervisor have a salary class and salary raise method, but the 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 calculation is different between the manager and the supervisor, where the method for salary raise belongs to the manager will only adding the amount of 1 million, but when we apply for the salary rise method belong to the supervisor, it will be adding the amount of 1.5 million rupiah. So let's say this is the main application of the staffing information system. Let's say we are creating a main object from a manager class, and we also creating the SPV object that is coming from the supervisor class. And then we fill up the parameters. Let's say the manager name will be Bill Gates and the salary would be 5 million. And then the supervisor object will be filled up with Susanto's name and the salary will be 1 million. So when we uh, submit or we're running the increase salary method between the manager and the supervisor object, then the result will be different. As you can see, the Bill Gates, because he is a manager, then the salary will be only increased for 1 million. So the initial salary was 5 million because it has an increasing salary, then the final salary will be 6 million. But unlike the manager, the supervisor salary basic was 1 million, but when we are running the increasing salary method, then the salary will be increased by 1.5 million. So the result will be 2.5 million rupiah. So this kind of situation, we need to apply the overriding method. So let's say we are creating the manager class. The manager class has the attribute of name and salary. Okay, okay. The manager class has the attribute name and salary, and it also have a constructor, and it also have an increasing salary method, and it sorry, it also has the print status method. And because the supervisor was inherited from the manager, so it's mean that all the attribute that coming from the manager will be derived into the supervisor. So it's not necessarily for the supervisor to define the name and the salary attribute. But since the increasing salary method process or calculation was different, so the supervisor class need to overriding the increasing salary method that is coming from the manager class. So this is the programming code. We have the manager, and then this is the attribute name and salary, and then this is the constructor, and then this is the increase salary method, where the increase was only 1 million, but for the increasing salary method belongs to the supervisor, the increase value was 1.5 million rupiah. So this kind of situation means that The supervisor class was overriding the parents the parents method or the parents method, which means that the supervisor was overriding the manager's method or activity. So this kind of situation cannot be applied in structural programming, where you cannot use a same function name. But because this is an object-oriented programming, then this kind of condition is necessary for the programmers to understand that uh, the manager and the supervisor have the same activity name, but have a different situation or having a different role. But the method name or the activity name is the same, which is increase salary. Or okay, this is the final. Uh, Sorry, this is the last presentation slide. So if you have any question, please don't hesitate to ask.